Hello and welcome to Watch Releases Recap for the week of May 31st until June the 7th. Let's begin with Omega and their new two-tone Speedmasters. Just a couple of months ago we saw a wide dial Speedy, which I did a review of. You can find the review on the channel and it's actually a pretty solid watch. Well, now we have addition of a couple of two-tone versions. One is a yellow gold, they're calling it the Moonshine Gold. The other one is Sadna Gold, which is essentially a rose gold two-tone version. If you are an Omega Speedmaster enthusiast, you probably know that a variation of these watches has existed in the past, but they were always special editions or limited editions. They weren't added to the standard catalog. These two new versions are in fact added to the standard catalog. Other than the color variation and the metal variation, everything else about the watch is pretty much exactly the same. It still comes in exactly the same case. It's 42 millimeters in diameter, 47.5 millimeters lug-to-lug distance, and these watches are about 13.2 millimeters in case height. Importantly, these versions are only available with the sapphire crystal because, as you know, the Moonwatch is available with both Hasselite and sapphire. These ones are only sapphire sandwich, which I guess kind of makes sense because these are more luxurious versions, so having them with Hasselite might be a little silly. They're still powered by the same caliber 3861 hand-wound movement. This is an excellent master chronometer movement, beating at 21,600 vibrations per hour. It has 50 hours of power reserve, 26 joules, and it's anti-magnetic up to 15,000 Gauss. Now, the watches themselves actually look pretty attractive. I mean, design is very subjective. I clearly like two-toned watches, and I'm a big fan of the Speedmaster, so a watch like this is right up my alley. I think I prefer the yellow gold version. The design of it just looks a little bit more balanced. I also like the gold accents around the bezel. I like the subdials done in a yellow gold tone. However, I do have to say that the rose gold version also looks very attractive. I like the fact that it has sort of a rose gold dial as well as a rose gold accent on the bezel. The subdials here are executed with a black tone and pink or rose gold colored accents, which does look very sharp. The only thing that I'm not excited about is the price for these watches. Both versions are priced exactly the same, $18,100 US. That's quite a bit of money, and they are part of the standard catalog. They're not limited editions, so you should be able to pick one up. I'm not sure how popular they're going to be, if there's going to be a waiting list or not. My guess, no waiting list, and without waiting list and maybe a few years down the line, I'm sure these watches will be on a gray market for a way lower price. And I think Omega has priced them a little bit too high. These are, in my opinion, maybe about 14 grand, 15 grand max. $18,000 is quite a bit of money. The new King Seiko KS1969 Series watches. Back in 1960s, King Seiko was created alongside with Seiko as sort of two competing houses to create a luxury alternative, a luxury version of Seiko watches. Now, King Seiko watches were not very popular in North America, but they were very popular in Asia. Eventually, they sort of went out of business, and back in 2020, King Seiko, or I should say Seiko, has brought back the name King Seiko, and they released one of their special models. Now, fast forward 4 years, there's a new version of the King Seiko, 4 new versions to be exact, and I think these watches actually look pretty cool. There are 4 different dials available of this watch. There's the standard sort of silver dial, there's the green one, purple one, and the limited edition, baby blue with dragon scales. Out of the ones that are available, my favorite is either the white dial, I think that looks very clean, or even the purple one, because that looks very unique. If you wear one of these watches on the wrist, you're probably going to get some compliments. In terms of the case, they are made out of stainless steel. They have about a 39.4 millimeter case diameter. These are very thin watches, just under 10 millimeters in case height. They feature 50 meters of water resistance, and they're powered by the caliber 6L35 automatic movement. It's an in-house Seiko movement that has 26 joules. It beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it has 45 hours of power reserve. Now these movements are pretty good, but Seiko has a better movement available. So I don't know why they insist on including this 6L35 or 6L36 or 6L37 caliber movements. They're not bad, but they're just not as accurate as some of the other movements that Seiko has. And they have included these movements in watches within this sort of price category because these watches are not cheap. They're going to be priced at about 3,200 euro, which is about the same in US dollars. And I think for that price point, people are expecting better accuracy than -10 to +15 seconds per day. Now, of course, that's a stated accuracy, and usually Seikos are more reliable and are more accurate, but still having a tolerance of 25 seconds per day for a watch within that $3,000 to $4,000 price category is just, in my opinion, a bit unacceptable. Seiko has also added a couple of dial variations to their Marinemaster line. Last year, Seiko released their new version of Marinemaster, and I was quite negative on that watch, and I think a lot of people misunderstood why I was so negative on this new version of Marinemaster. And it's because the new version of Marinemaster looks nothing like the old version of Marinemaster. When you have a watch as unique looking as Marinemaster and as beloved as Marinemaster was, why not sort of design the watch along those same design principles? Because these new Marinemasters are very attractive watches, don't get me wrong, but they just look like a standard diver that's on the market. They look like a lot of other versions of the same watch. They look like the SPB Seikos. There's nothing really that special about them. And if you saw one across the room, you wouldn't be able to tell that it's a Marinemaster. So that's why I was kind of negative on it. And also the movement choice and the price. With all of that being said, let's actually talk about these two new color variations. Out of the two, I prefer this sort of light blue dial color. I think that looks really good, especially combine that with a black looking bezel. The blue one looks pretty good, but I don't know why. Maybe it's just the pictures. It looks a little bit on the cheaper side. I know it probably isn't. I'm sure in person it feels quite good, but just looking at pictures, for some reason, the blue and blue doesn't work for me with this design. It still features that sort of horizontal striping on the dial, 39.5mm diameter, just over 47mm like-to-like distance, and these watches are on the slimmer side. They're about 12.3mm in case height. They still feature 200 meters of water resistance, and these ones are powered by the Seiko Excalibur 6L37 automatic movement, which is actually a very similar movement to the movement we just talked about in the King Seikos. That was the 6L35, this is 6L37. There are a few different changes between the two movements. I think this one absorbs shock a little bit better, but it still beats at the same 28,800 vibrations per hour, still has 45 hours of power reserve and 26 joules, and the same stated tolerances. And these watches are also pretty expensive. These ones are priced at 3,400 euros or about the same in US dollars. So these watches are even more expensive than the King Seikos. On one hand, yeah, you understand that because it's a diver watch. On the other hand, what the hell? Why is this watch so expensive? And I know what some people are going to say, well, what about this brand charging a lot of money? What about this brand charging a lot of money? Yeah, all of that is accurate. And when I'm going to talk about those brands, I'll complain about their pricing. But right now we're talking about Seiko, and I think these watches are just too expensive for what they are. Speaking of Seiko, there's actually one more release, and it's the redesigned Samurai Collection. Seiko Samurai is a bit of a divisive model. I think you either love it or you hate it. I happen to really love this model. I think the sharp angles and the sort of aggressive over-the-top look of that watch really works for a certain type of person, and I happen to be that type of person. Well, now 2024, there is a redesigned new version of the Samurai. First of all, the case has been reworked, and that's actually the biggest change. The design has been changed as well as the case dimensions. This watch used to be 43.5mm. It was smaller, but it was still a bit of a large watch. Now they shrunk down. Now they're about 41.7mm in diameter and about 12.3mm in case height. 50mm like-to-like distance. So if you have a bit of a smaller wrist, I think you should be pretty confident at wearing a watch like this. Still comes with 200 meters of water resistance. It is powered by the new caliber 4R35. It's not a new caliber to Seiko, but I think it's the new caliber to this model, is their introductory level movement, beating at 21,600 vibrations. It has 23 joules and 41 hours of power reserve. They also raised the price of these new models. They're coming in around 650 euros on the bracelet, or about 600 euros on this strap. Out of the three new versions, my favorite is actually the black version. I like the black on black look. Not the PVD coated one, just the standard stainless steel looking one. Even the date between 4 and 5 doesn't really bother me. However, what does bother me a little bit is the shrunken size. Now, usually I prefer smaller watches, but I think for some watches, they're just so iconic for being big and over the top that shrinking them does the watch or the model the service. And I think this watch here, even though it was too big for a lot of people, maybe even too big for my preference, but that was kind of the point of the Samurai. It was this crazy big over the top watch. Now having it about 41.5 millimeters, yes, it's gonna appeal to more people, but it becomes a little bit less special. Nevertheless, I think it still is a very attractive watch. However, the price was raised. Before, these watches were around like $450. Now they're over $600, which I think it's a little bit too much, especially since they still don't come with a sapphire crystal. It's still a hard Lex crystal. Seiko, I think if you're gonna raise the price, raise the specs as well. The new updated TAG Heuer Aquaracer Professional 300 Date and Professional GMT. TAG Heuer has a better reputation. Not a lot of watch enthusiasts specifically are too crazy about TAG Heuer models. However, Aquaracer has been known to be one of the better watches in the TAG Heuer lineup. Well, now this model has gotten an upgrade, and I actually think that the upgrade that they presented here is a welcomed one. So first, let's talk about the diver, the Professional 300 Date. The watch now comes in a slightly smaller case. It's about 42 millimeters in case diameter, as opposed to 43 on the older version. It's about 12 millimeters in case height, and the lug distance is about 48 millimeters. So the watch is actually a bit thicker than the previous version, but that's because it's powered by the new movement. Caliber TH31-00. It's a Celita based caliber that's an upgrade over the older version. Now it has 80 hours of power reserve as opposed to 38 hours like we saw in the previous version, which is of course a welcomed addition from the Caliber 5, because now the industry is moving to those longer power reserves, and having a new watch come out in 2024 with less than 40 hours of power reserve is just not right, especially these luxury watches. The design has also been changed slightly, nothing really crazy to it. It still kind of looks like a weird mix of a Submariner, a Seamaster, and maybe a little bit of Breitling design language in there. It looks like a weird mash of a bunch of watches. If you're into it, you will like it. If you're not into it, you will not like it. I still don't really like the Cyclops by the 6 o'clock position. I think that looks weird. And speaking of weird design mashes, we also have the new GMT one. And that one, of course, looks like a mix of a GMT Master, again mixed with a little bit of a Seamaster, and once again mixed a little bit of Breitling. So this watch here also comes with a slightly different case. Now it's about 13.5 millimeters in case height, as opposed to the previous version that was just under 13 millimeters. And once again, the added case height is because of the new caliber. It still comes in a 42 millimeter case diameter, so the diameter hasn't changed. It's just the case thickness did. So these ones are powered by the new caliber TH31-03, which is a high beat movement, beating at 28,800 vibrations per hour. And it also has an increased power reserve to 80 hours. So in terms of the pricing, I think TAG Heuer has actually been pretty reasonable. For the diver on the bracelet, they're about $3,800 US, as opposed to I think 35 or 3,600 before. So only a couple $100 difference. And the GMT version is about $4,200 on the bracelet, as opposed to I think about 3,900 or 4,000 for the previous version. But of course, wait a little bit. On the gray market, these watches will be available for like around $2,500 or so, and I think at that price point these are fantastic. And that's it for this week's releases. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos like this in the future, and leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what releases stood out to you personally. I always enjoy reading your comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.